Good morning and welcome to, I think this is the fourth edition of Facebook Live. I hope you're all safe and well out there. Just adhered the minute silence. Yeah, I hope you're all keeping well and you're not too troubled by the disease. Your families are all safe and so on. And hopefully we're all going to get through this together. It's quite challenging being in for this length of time, but I'm sure we're all coping. Today, the subject I picked to talk about was problematic subfloors. And I'm just going to pick a few. There's probably a lot, well, there's not probably, there is a lot more out there that could be classed as problematic. But I'm going to pick a few subjects from what have come up from the last few weeks where I've been doing these sessions. And the first one is I'm going to talk about is magnesite. We don't come across magnesite that often now, but now and again we still do, and people still have issues when they come across it. They don't know how to deal with it, what it is, and things like that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight to what magnesite actually is as one of my problematic subfloors, and then we'll go on and look at some more as well. So the first one is obviously magnesite is a composite flooring and is formed by mixing magnesium oxide with some fillers, some colour pigments and a solution of magnesium chloride prior to its installation. The fillers they use were wood flowers, sawdust and bits of sand, and they're usually coloured a brick red colour or a straw yellow colour. Now I hadn't really come across a yellow one up until probably 12 months ago up in Scotland. Most of the ones I've ever come up across were the red brick type ones. But there's a few things to think about there. Obviously, you've got the fillers inside there, which are wood flour and sawdust, and obviously sand and so on to think about. So the magnesium oxide reacts with the magnesium chloride to form a solid magnesium oxychloride, which sets hard. So that's how they harden. The two chemicals react against each other and harden, binding together all the flour, all the fillers to produce a floor covering, and it was suitable for a wear coat and that type of stuff, and that's how people would they'd leave it because floor coverings, when magnesite, a lot of magnesite was used, floor coverings were quite expensive and probably in short supply. So this was an alternative, a little bit like the old days of Marley tiles, where very cheap type of installation for floor covering. Magnesite, similar sort of thing. So it would be a wear covering. So magnesite flooring was commonly installed as a bonded construction, so it was bonded to the concrete, and it was laid between 10 to 25 mil thick. One cut applications laid to a finish with thickness approximately 20 mil. So if they're going to put it down in a one coat, usually about 20 mil thick. And then sometimes they did a two coat application where they'd put the first coat down at 15 mil thick, and the first coat would have some coarser sort of sawdust and fillers in it, and then they'd apply a 5 mil finishing coat over the top. And I have come across both methods of insulation where you see a two coat and a one coat. So that's usually how it comes, but usually around about a maximum of, on an average, a maximum of about 25 mil. However, you do get some on the odd occasion where they're up to 50 mil thick, and obviously in that scenario we could have to be looking at taking it all out and using something like an A38 screed to replace it back, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. So that's magnesite, that's the type of materials, but the key things to sort of recap on there, obviously, is its ingredient, is the wood flowers, sawdust, and so on, which can cause us problems later down the line. So if magnesite flooring becomes wet, then the product's going to swell, and the wood-based components will absorb the moisture and become soft, obviously, and it'll break down. So in most common, it's common to find the magnesite on direct ground floors in the days where they didn't put structural membranes in. So you know they would put them onto a floor that was damp, um, but because these floors could breathe, they would survive, and they'd be okay in that environment. So in them days, they'd probably be covered over with if they were covered over, of course, a carpet or something like that. And they say it would allow it to breathe, and the moisture vapor could evaporate into the atmosphere, and you know it wouldn't cause the um, too much of a problem to the magnesite. However, if you were going to cover it with an impervious floor covering, such as a vinyl or a PVC or impervious carpet, then the magnesite can no longer breathe, and it won't be able to lose its moisture into the atmosphere. And this will result in the magnesite becoming damp, swelling, and in severe cases, rapidly losing its strength and even turning to a soft paste-like consistency. So, with magnesite, with all that bear in mind, it does need to be removed. So where magnesite flooring is to be installed, you know, it does really where you're going to put a floor covering where there's a magnesite floor cover installed, it does need to be removed. Okay, so if you're going to remove it, take it out. Eventually, you will reach some type of concrete hard base, and then there's a number of applications you can use to reinstate the floor. The first one could be, and again, it'll all depend on the thickness. Obviously, if it's a 50 mm magnesite floor that you've removed, as you say, quite unusual, but you do get them now and again. The magnesite needs removing. And then probably what we'd recommend, obviously clean off the concrete slab that you've reached, put down, clean it off, make sure it's nice and smooth, put down a layer of visqueen or DPM of the correct gauge. Put some perimeter foam tape around any columns around the walls, and then use our ARDEX A38 screed to replace that. Now, obviously, by putting the polythene in, you've dealt with any moisture in the subfloor, any rising damp. So the A38 screed can go on top of that, and then that usually dries good enough or dries enough to fit a floor covering on after 48 hours. So after the 48 hours, you can use some P51 primer, diluted 3:1, applied with a broom, and maybe put something like K39 on the top and install your floor covering with an ARDEX adhesive. So that's if you get, if you're dealing with thicknesses above 50 mm. If it's sort of 15 to 40 mm thick, then you could obviously take up the magnesite, clean the base off, get back to the concrete, make sure the base is fully clean, and you could put a bonded screed down, something like, again, use our ARDEX A18 as a slurry bond on top of the concrete, and then put something like our A38 screed on top of that, wood floated finish. Now, because you've bonded it to the concrete slab, the rising damp is still going to come up through the screed. It's not going to affect the screed as such, but it's going to come up and it'll still rise up through the screed. So in that scenario, we would then recommend, once the screed is hardened, 48 hours, you can put your ARDEX DPM1C on the top, let that cure it, and then either ARDEX NA direct on that or P4 prime it in K39. So there's two systems there where you're using a sand cement screed, or if your if your magnesite is of a thinner consistency, maybe 10 mm to 30 mm, then obviously you can always use the ARDEX NA and chipping scenario. So again, remove the magnesite, clean off the base, remove any debris or anything like that, vacuum it off, and then put your ARDEX NA and chippings down. So ARDEX NA mixed with chippings, usually equal volume, and smooth the floor to your thickness. Then let that go off. Then a coat of the ARDEX DPM1C on the top, laid at 350 microns. Let that go off, and then another coat of ARDEX NA on the top, and then install your floor. Now, them three systems are all a way of getting round dealing with the removal of magnesite and reinstating the floor. But I can't emphasize enough, it must be removed. Um, Even if you've got a suspended floor, uh, there's still risks if you've covered it over with vinyls and stuff like that. There's still risks that moisture can attack it from above, and prolonged attack from moisture above can still breaking it down and soften. So yeah, even if it's on a suspended floor or anything like that, realistically, it's got to come out. Okay, I hope that's helped if you ever come across magnesite. But bear in mind, if you ever come across it, you're not out there on your own. Okay, you just give us a call at ARDEX, speak to one of our technical support managers, our ASMs, or our business development team, and we will talk you through the process, or even come out to site and have a look at it and advise you accordingly. If you're struggling to recognise it, or in them scenarios, a lot of you carry camera phones and stuff like that now. My advice would be to take some pictures of it, and send them over to one of our guys, including myself, and we can have a look at it. And sometimes what we might ask you to do is just chisel a little bit of it out, so we can have a look at have a look at it side on, and it'll give us a better idea of what it is. But we're there to support you. But yeah, key thing, don't lay over them. So let's move on. Quick conversation on Granwood. I'm just going to look if there's any questions. No, nothing so far, which is good. So I like it. We'll move on. Granwood subfloors. Another one you come across as a problematic subfloor. Granwood is a composite block, first produced in the 1920s, manufactured using sawdust, clay, and linseed oil. So again, very similar scenarios. Very similar scenarios to the magnesite sort of situation, where you've got sawdust, and obviously in this case we've got linseed oil mixed in with it as well. The blocks were either laid in a sand and cement screed. They could be from 10 mil to 25 mil in a bed, or sometimes the slightly thinner blocks would be laid in almost like a tile adhesive. So variations on the thing. But even the manufacturers of Granwood actually say they do not recommend you should overlay with a resilient floor covering. So again, come across Granwood, it should be coming out. But just to sort of give you a little bit more information, as with lino, the presence of linseed oil in the product will stop adhesion of materials. So because it's got oil in it, especially linseed oil, well, any oil really, but linseed oil in this product, you won't get a smoothing compound to stick to it. Although I have seen contractors carry out surface prep to try and remove the sealers and the surface dressings off it, and they appear to achieve a good initial adhesion, but over time that adhesion will break down and it will result in a floor failure. So again, don't even try that. The effort you're going to put in to try and sand it off and clean it, it's all a waste of time. So they should always be removed. And again, if they're going to be removed, depending on the thickness, but most time with Granwood, it's not too thick, up to a maximum of 25 mil. That would be a simple get back to the concrete base, clean it off, NA and chip-ins, DPM, NA in most cases. Obviously, if you do come across one, might be quite unusual, quite a thick floor, and you're looking for a build-up, then we could switch it to one of our rapid drying screed systems. Okay. So that's Granwood. Chipboard is another one. Come across now and again. Get asked this a lot. I take a lot of calls, and some of our other guys take a lot of calls in regards to chipboard and going over it. So chipboard, they're manufactured by a wide range of companies out there, and they obviously, a lot of them now, they incorporate chemicals, which I've got somebody messaging me on different social medias now. Right, so they incorporate chemicals, so they make, some manufacturers will make them moisture resistant, so they'll impregnate them with something. Some make them fire retardant, and some use waterproofing type of products on them. All these things do cause a knock-on effect. Any board that has been treated can prove difficult to adhere to. So when applying it, if you're going to adhere to it with a smoothing compound, or try and adhere to it with a smoothing compound or anything like that. So um, when we looked at a number of boards and we've done lots of testing on chipboard, we found the adhesion and tensile strength of applying a smoothing compound varied even within the board itself. So if we had one board that we were testing, it might stick in one little patch and it'd fail in another one. So realistically, I think you guys know where we're going with this. And then if you get recycled timber used in the makeup of it, they've used even more resins and waxes again, which stops this smoothing compound and so on bonding to it. So one of the things that we recommend when you come across chipboard is overboarding it. Yeah, because there's that many variations out there, and it's very difficult to judge. Can I lay on this one? Can I put a smoothing compound on this one, or can't I put a smoothing compound on it? I know some people, and sometimes we'll advise people to just try and do a little water droplet test to see if it penetrates in like a smoothing compound or a primer would. But realistically, it's not as conclusive as actually knowing the whole makeup of the board and what might have been used in the makeup of it. Did they put a fire retardant in it? Did they put a wax impregnator in it or something like that? So if we look at all that, we would recommend simply overboarding when you come to chipboard. And obviously overboarding with a 6mm ply, obviously such as Hansen SP101. We tend to recommend the SP101 like all manufacturers do, as it's, Hansen has certainly put a lot of work into developing that product and ensuring it meets the requirements. Obviously, when you're putting your boards down, obviously, and I don't need to tell you guys this, make sure you stagger them so they don't coincide with the moisture resistant chipboard joints, and obviously make sure it's suitably fixed. Now, going off track a little bit, but I am going to just go over that. A little thing that happened to me, and anybody who's been on one of my training courses, I've probably bored you to death with this. When you're overfixing chipboard, I'm very reluctant to nail it, ring shank nail it, or staple it. I did a little job for somebody many years ago, little bathroom Antico, so I overboarded it, 6mm ply. I was a big user of ring shank nails, so I ring shank nailed it. Made sure the spacings were perfect, got it all nice, feather finished over the top, and laid the Antico with some borders. Really nice. Customer was really pleased. Then after about 3, 4, 5 weeks, I got this phone call back. Can you come and have a look at the floor, Steve? We're really happy with it, but we just got a bit of an indentation come by the toilet. So I went out and had a quick look at the floor. And yeah, lo and behold, there was an indentation, and it was quite a big indentation, probably the size of an egg, almost in front of the toilet. So I was looking at it thinking, well, what's this? But what basically happened is when I nailed the chipboard, because the chipboard was quite brittle, it basically punched the back of the chipboard out, and then over time, when somebody stood in it, it actually crushed through. So when I removed the section, there was nothing there other than a hole. Luckily, I only had to replace a small section. I used some new some thick plywood to repair it back and so on. But it always taught me a lesson. If ever I'm going to plywood over a chipboard floor, I would always use screws for fixing to avoid the risk of punching the back out. So once you have plied it, get your ply nice and flat, make sure it's fastened, and I'm sure you all know the correct spacings of your fixings. For any of us old guys out there, 4 inches round the edge, 6 inches in the middle, and for all you youngsters in the trade, yeah, that's 100mm round the edge and 150mm in the middle. And make sure you fastened it down, and then you've got the option of obviously feather finishing the joints, or if you want to try to completely remove the joints so there's no chance of any grin through, then you can pre-smooth the floor without priming using ARDEX NA straight over the plywood. It's not an issue. Okay, so that's chipboard, another problematic one we get asked a lot. So hopefully that's sort of cleared it up where we come from, or our view on that. Asphalt subfloors. I'm sure spoke about asphalt on the first week, but I'm just going to cover it again. Asphalt, very good material, putting a lot of old properties to deal with moisture. Okay, and it is a good product for dealing with moisture. And if asphalt is installed correctly, it is a really good product for doing that. But when you go to a job and you find the asphalt, usually black in colour, every now and again you do get a red one, and people get a bit confused. Is it asphalt or is it a magnesite? But again, send us some pictures and we'll try and help you out determine what it is. So you get some asphalt down. Now, as long as the asphalt is in good condition, no damage to it whatsoever, and it hasn't had a paint applied or anything like that, because if it's been painted, it'll need to come off. Sometimes I've come across it where people have put flooring adhesives direct to the asphalt. Again, that's going to have to come off. Yeah, but as long as the asphalt's got no cracks and damages in it, and it's nice clean asphalt, we would recommend giving it a wash off with a sub solution. Something like a 10% of washing soda, mix with water, wash the floor down, and give it another further couple of washes to make sure you've got all the residues off it, and then use ARDEX NA on the top. You're probably only going to need a 3 to 6 mil coat, nice and smooth out. However, if you do come across asphalt that's got cracks and damages into cracks into it, or maybe somebody's chopped the wall out and filled that section with concrete or something like that, then you could have some problems. Obviously, the rising damp will come through the concrete sections. Also, the asphalt can push up against the concrete sections because the asphalt's actually loose, it sits on a fleece, so it can actually curl where it's meeting something solid. And the other thing is, if you've got any cracks in it, then there's going to allow moisture to come through them sections. So if you ever get one like that, you've got two options. The first option would be to consult an asphalt contractor to see if they can carry out any repairs to it. Or the second option would be to remove the asphalt, clean off the concrete base underneath, and use your ARDEX NA and chip-ins, then DPM 1C, and then another coat of ARDEX NA, and that should deal with that issue of asphalt. But again, if you're not sure, send us some pictures over at ARDEX and we can have a look at that for you. I'm just looking. One of the other ones I'm just going to talk about, and then I'll take some questions from you guys. And I think I touched on this last week, I think, because somebody did ask the question, but I'll cover it again just to make sure. Is we get asked a lot in technical. I take a lot of calls and even attended site yesterday, and that's what jogged my memory about it, where pre-applied smoothing compound. The builder's been out to his local store, bought some smoothing compound, leavening compound, whatever he wants to call it, and pre-smoothed the floor. And we get asked so many times, is it okay to go over this? Well, let's think about it. Let's start our minds thinking, okay? What's he gone over? What was that subfloor? Was it concrete? Was it screed? Was it anhydrite? Was it an asphalt? Was it magnesite? Was it tim? He's covered it for a reason, okay? It could have been paint. It could have been anything under that smoothing compound. So straight away, if you're asking yourself that question, what has he gone over and why has he gone over that? Then we should be thinking, is it suitable to carry on? Does it need to be removed? And the answer almost with that question alone would be, well, really, it needs to be removed. But then if you continue to go on, did he do any surface prep? Was there any sanding done? Did he remove any plaster drop-ins? Did he remove any flaking paint? Or has he just tried to cover it up? So again, back to the indication, that smoothing compound is probably going to need removing. Another question to ask, did he do any moisture tests? Was the smoothing compound he used moisture tolerant? Was it compatible in them situations? Was it compatible to go over these type of substrates? All these questions. And then the final one, did he prime the floor? Yeah, or was the floor primed? We all know what builders like. Priming to them is PVA. Yeah, again, not recommended in these instances. So whenever we get asked these questions, is it okay to go over a pre-applied smoothing compound? Or sometimes we say a smoothing compound of unknown origin because we don't know what it is because it's been down a while or whatever. Then realistically, the only way we could give a definite guarantee would be to remove that product, and then the smoothing compound that you're applying is fit for purpose. The subfloor you're going over has been prepared properly. You've done your moisture test to determine the right smoothing compound, and if required, you have primed it with a proper primer. So again, if you're ever in that situation, you stood there looking at a builder with them, don't be frightened. You're not on your own. Give us a ring, and we will, we'll back you up. If need be, if it's a big job, we'll come out to site, and we can put it in a report we recommend that would need removing. So as best as if they're looking for a guarantee for what you're doing. So I hope that's helped with problematic subsoils, and I'm sure there's many more out there. Problematic substrates that if you want me to cover them, just drop us a little line in the live box now, or drop us an email to later on, or a private message later on, and we can I can address them for you, and cover it next week. It's not an issue. So I'm just going to go through some questions now. Chris Hughes, you've asked about asphalt butting up to concrete. What's the best way of leveling over it? Well, I think I've just covered that, but I will mention it again. So if somebody's knocked out a wall or something in an asphalt floor and they filled that channel with concrete, the first issue you've got there is where that concrete is joining the original concrete underneath, then it's going to allow moisture to come through that section. So it's obviously not going to be working as a damp-proof membrane. So that's your first problem. And the other problem is where the asphalt meets the concrete, because the asphalt it sits on a fleece and it tends to move during temperature changes and stuff like that. You'll notice where goes up against the concrete, it curls. It'll start curling up on the edges. It might not happen straight away, but eventually it will. So nobody recommends filling it in with concrete like it's been done. It should have been repaired with asphalt itself, okay, not concrete. So again, the advice would be get an asphalt contractor to come and inspect it and see if he can repair it, or if not, remove the whole asphalt and replace it with NA and chip-ins and then a DPM. You couldn't even put a DPM just on top of the concrete, because where the joint is between the concrete and the asphalt, again, there's no way of sealing that. The movement will cause, and moisture will be coming up through that void. So realistically, that's what you're going to have to go back and do. Okay. I'll scroll down, see if there's any others. Excuse the silence. Okay. No, I think we're covering most of it. It's great to see some of you guys coming and joining me for these sessions. As you know, when we do these sessions, we're not sure whether people are going to tune in and so on. But it's good, and it's good for us to spread out to help with the knowledge and so on, and build everybody's knowledge. ARDEX, and many other trades, every day's a learning day, and all these things top up our knowledge when we come across these problematic substrates. So another thing that I wanted to do today, and I'll one of the other things that I wanted to cover today was I was going to a few weeks ago somebody dropped us a message and asked about the ARDEX dust freeze. Well, today I was going to give away an ARDEX dust free if you would like to answer this question. And drop us a line, whether private messages or drop us a line on here and so on. If you were, so the question is, you've got a floor of 195 square meters and you need to smooth it with 10 mil of ARDEX NA. So you've got 195 meters and you need to cover the whole floor with 10 millimeters of ARDEX NA. How many units of ARDEX NA would you need? If you could, and we will pick one of the correct answers out at random, and somebody can win the ARDEX dust free. So have a look at that, have a think about it. There's an easy way of working it out. I'm not going to tell you, but maybe having a look at the ARDEX website might help you, and go from there. I see a bit of a question going backwards. Who makes the best coffee at the office? Um, it's not Steve. No, you're right there. I never make a cup. Yeah. Um, Guys, just on that one, when the academy is back up and running, which I'm not quite sure when it'll be just yet, but I've spoke a couple of times today about using ARDEX A38 screed, one of our rapid setting screeds, and we do ARDEX A38, we do ARDEX 35, A35, we do ARDEX A29, and we do ARDEX A23 sand and cement screeds. They are very, very easy to install. As long as you've got the right equipment. And if you come along on one of our intermediate subfloor preparation courses at ARDEX, we will show you how to install them screeds. Ideal for when you're doing patches, ideal for when you're, got some deep fill sections to do. We also do ARDEX A38 mix, ARDEX A35 mix, where you can just mix the bag with your normal mixing drills and do a repair section with that. So it's another option out there, but please get yourself on one of our intermediate subfloor preparation courses and come and see how that's done. So has anybody else got any more questions for me today? Everybody's entitled to answer the questions. Yeah, everybody's entitled to try and answer the questions. It's the easy one out there, easiest one out there. I'm sure everybody's going to come back with the correct answer. Next week, I'm not sure just yet what next week's topic is going to be about, but I'll come up with something, and hopefully you're going to tune in and see what we're going to do. So I don't think there's any more questions come up there. I hope that's helped with some of our problematic subfloors, i.e. magnesite, groundwood, chipboard, asphalts, even pre-smoothed smoothing compound. What we got there, Max Smith? Uh, yeah, let's just look at that. Morning, Steve. Why can you form a ramp to feather edge with A45, but only to 2 mil with A46? Does this affect overspread when filling in? I'll actually, a good question that, Mike, and I'll go back and check that. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't go down to feather edge, but just leave that with me and I'll just look into that. I'm pretty sure I can look into that. I'll get back to you, Mike, and I promise I will get back to you later on. Simon, if for argument's sake, if you self level over a self leveler, would you still need to prime? Right, I've sort of covered that earlier on. So if you don't know the origin of the self level you're going over, then if you don't know the origin of the sevens, what you're going over, realistically it should be removed because you don't know what they've gone over with it or stuff like that. But if it is a smoothing compound that you know is of good quality and so on, yeah, I would probably recommend it's primed. You probably dilute the primer down 3-to-1, 5-to-1. Apply it with a broom, let the primer go off, and then give it a second coat of your smoothing compound. But there's a couple of things to remember in that, without getting too technical, is are you going to go too thick with your second coat, and is it going to pull the first coat off? Because ideally, we would always recommend applying a thick coat first and then a thinner coat over the top. So for argument's sake, yes, you could go over it if you prime, but it would need priming, but just these other variables that you have to think about. Okay. Best adhesive for sticking. Mosaic to plywood. Is that a tiling question? I would have thought. Uh, Simon, I'll get back to you later on that one. I'm presuming it must be walls that you're adhering to, because obviously plywood's not recommended. Well, we plywood technically isn't. Well, we wouldn't like to recommend plywood as any tiling background now because it can distort and so on. But I'll get back to you, Simon. I'll probably private message you on that one and find you a solution if that's okay. Okay, I just need a little bit more information what you're doing with the ply and so on. So hope that's okay, Simon. Just on that note, because these last 4 weeks I've been have all been related, Technical Tuesdays have been related to do with flooring. At ARDEX, we've decided we're going to stick with Technical Tuesdays for flooring, and now we're going to do something on Fridays in regards to tiling. So for any tilers that have tuned in, yeah, please tune in on Friday and fire some questions at me in regards to tiling. Somebody's put there, what substrates can feather go over? Feather can go over sand and cement screeds, concretes, smoothing compounds, plywood, ceramic tiles. Yeah, a vast range of stuff that feather can go over. But just log into the ARDEX website, get the data sheet, and it'll tell you all the substrates you can go over there. Okay, but yeah, definitely it'll go over there. Yeah, any other questions for me today, guys, before we tune out? Remember to ask the quiz question, today's quiz. Yeah, and so on. Mike, I'll get back to you later on in regards to your A46 question. And any others that I've missed. I do tend to go back over the next few days and just catch up with some of the questions that I've missed and so on. Please remember, once all this is over, the academies will be back open, and anybody that's tuned in, you're more than welcome to come along, and it'd be great to see you there, and we can share knowledge with each other, which is all about when you come on these type of events. So if you've got no more questions for me, I think we'll think about calling it a day. Shane, that's a good one. Catch up for a few beers before the year's ends. Yeah, that's a guaranteed. I'm sure we'll catch up somewhere for a couple of beers. Anything else? No, I think that's it for this week. I'll catch you all this time next week. Cheers, guys. Thanks for everybody who's tuned in. I'm going to try and do some more Steve at Home videos this week. So if you've got any suggestions, what you'd like to see, maybe something unusual you've not seen from ARDEX before, get in touch and I'll see what I can replicate. Cheers, guys. Have a good, safe week. Bye now.